You're looking for a guitar that won't make you second-guess every chord, that stays comfortable after hours of playing, and that actually gives you the tone you're after without emptying your wallet. That's the exact place most of us end up when we're hunting for a new electric, especially when the market is flooded with models that brag about 12-inch necks, ultra-lightweight bodies, and custom electronics, but don't tell you how they feel under the rigors of a gig or a practice session. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When a multi-scale guitar first pops up in a search, the hesitation is real. The fanned frets look cool, but they also look intimidating. Will my hand adjust? Will the string tension feel too tight on the lower strings or too slack on the higher ones? Will I end up spending more on setup or replacement parts just because it's a niche design? Those are the questions that keep a lot of players on the fence, and the Axe Design Lab SML721 tries to answer them without forcing you to become a luthier. The first thing I noticed about the Axe Design Lab is how the multi-scale concept is baked into the ergonomics rather than being an afterthought. The lower strings sit on a longer scale while the treble side stays shorter, which naturally evens out string tension across the whole range. In practice, that means when you drop down to a low B or C for modern metal riffs, the notes stay tight and articulate instead of sounding floppy or muddy. Conversely, the higher strings retain that snappy response that makes leads cut through a mix. For a player who toggles between heavy rhythm work and soaring solos, that balance shows up in everyday playing, not just on a lab bench. The body shape of the SML721 is another quiet win. It's a contour that feels like it was designed for a player who spends long stretches in front of an amp. The waist is scooped just enough to let the guitar sit comfortably against your torso, and the neck joint sits low enough to keep the fretboard within easy reach without you having to hunch. I tried it both standing and sitting, and the weight distribution stayed consistent, which is something you often overlook until you've been on stage for an hour and start feeling the strain. The Midnight Arctic Ocean matte finish isn't just a pretty color. The matte coating reduces glare under stage lights and doesn't show fingerprints as quickly as a glossy finish, so you spend less time wiping and more time playing. Now, let's talk about the practical side of setting this thing up. Multi-scale guitars can be a bit finicky with intonation because each string has its own optimal scale length. The SML721, however, comes from a line that's already calibrated for factory accuracy, meaning you can pull it out of the case, tune it up, and you'll be ready to play without a full professional setup. That's a big deal if you're a gigging musician who can't afford a day-long tech session before each show. The trade-off is that if you ever decide to change to a radically different string gauge, you might need a more thorough adjustment than you'd need on a standard scale guitar. It's not a deal-breaker, just something to keep on the back of your mind. Tone-wise, the multi-scale design gives you a broader harmonic spectrum. The longer lower scale adds sustain and definition to the bass end, which shines when you're playing drop-tuned rhythm parts that need to cut through a dense mix. The shorter treble scale keeps the highs crisp, so lead lines don't get lost in the wash. In a real-world scenario, say, a live band setting where you're sharing the stage with a drummer and a bassist, those characteristics help you lock into the low end while still being able to throw a singable solo over the top. It's the kind of nuance that you don't really notice until you compare it side by side with a single-scale guitar you already own. Who should seriously consider the Axe Design Lab SML721? If you're a player who regularly explores lower tunings, dabbles in progressive or metal styles, or simply wants a more ergonomic feel for long rehearsals, this guitar lines up nicely. It also appeals to those who appreciate a unique visual statement. The Midnight Arctic Ocean matte isn't something you see on every stage, and it can become a subtle part of your personal brand. For gigging musicians who need an instrument that stays in tune across a wide tonal range without constant tweaking, the multi-scale design is a practical advantage, not just a novelty. Who might want to skip it? If you're a traditionalist who prefers the classic single scale,